Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining live and thank you for catching the replay. My name is Antonia, and as always, I'm the marketing manager of the Shiatsu Society, and I am delighted to also be the host of the Conscious Conversation. And today I have Nick Paul as my guest, and I'm incredibly honored and curious to find out more about his journey. Nick has over 30 years of experience practicing and teaching Shiatsu. He has also studied Seiki, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming for anyone who doesn't know this, clean language, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. His book, Words That Touch: How to Ask Questions Your Body Can Answer, is a comprehensive guide to using clean language in bodywork therapy. Nick, I'm incredibly curious to find out more about how you got to this varied palette of tools that you bring to your shiatsu practice and beyond. Welcome.
Thanks, Antonia. Thank you very much for including me in this series. I've been looking at the other ones as a bit of research, and um, I I just thought it'd be good to kick off with something that Michael Rose said, which was one of the good things about shiatsu is that even if you're pretty hopeless at it, it's still very effective. And I know he was joking a bit, but that's actually kind of true. And the question is why? Why? And I think if we're talking about shiatsu, um, specifically, I mean, as opposed to all the kinds of bodywork therapies there are and so on, obviously we tend to get straight into the details, all the meridians and the points and the theory and the extra channels and everything. And to answer that point that Michael makes, I think it's kind of interesting actually to step back and think, well, what's really happening when we're doing shiatsu? And then we can easily plug into all of this wonderful work that is coming out now and is specifically for us. Cindy Engel, a shiatsu practitioner, has written the most wonderful book, Another Self. If you haven't read it yet, you've got to read it. If you have any intention of touching anybody ever, you've got to read that. Um, and she's assembled all of the latest research on the psychological, clinical psychological kind of tests, research psychology, I mean, about what actually happens between two brains, two hearts, two nervous systems when we get close to each other and we're actually paying attention to each other. And all the buzzwords are out there now: embodiment, co-regulation, body to body listening. There's the great psychoanalytical psychotherapist called Alan Shaw, who wrote volumes and volumes on the research about how do bodies listen to each other
Mhm.
and how do we co-regulate. And Michael's point is you don't really have to know a lot about shiatsu as long as you have a good intention and an honest touch. This whole business of co-regulation is happening straight away, and it's so healing. It's such a great call to the nervous system to come back home or to come back to something that feels more grounded, feels more fluid and flexible and open and all of these things. So that was the first point I wanted to make is let's step back a bit
Mhm.
from all of the mental clutter and uh, detailed Chinese um, ideas about it and just think this is a heart to heart thing, which of course is what Masanago is always saying and so on.
That's wonderful, and it opens the box to so many questions. And I'm wondering, what does it take to have an open heart to be able to hold that space? Because yes, like you've mentioned, we hear all these buzzwords about nervous system regulation, co-regulating,
Mm.
bringing everything back to balance. But what happens when there isn't much space to co-regulate?
When there isn't much space, did you say?
Yes, when you have someone, for example, it was in the conversation with Michael that he mentioned something along the lines of having a quotation marks closed heart.
Oh, yes. Um, exactly. That's a very good point. And I was thinking, yeah, okay, what would I be doing there? Because um, I'm here because I really love to bring some kind of verbal communication in to the process. And the method I use is called clean language. But I always say to a new client, this is not intended to be a psychotherapeutic conversation. It's not between you and me. I'm just asking you the simplest possible questions to help you have a conversation with your own body mind.
Hmm.
So wherever a person is at when they come, I mean, let's not forget the biggest step has already been taken. They have come to see you.
So there's an openness there, yes.
There's an offer there, isn't there? I'm here. Listen
Hmm.
to me. Find where I'm closed. Find the bit that might be open. You know, and my job is to find that bit or but this is the thing I think for me, and it's like there, we do really focus very much on that compassionate connect from the heart stuff when we're
Hmm.
doing shiatsu. Psychotherapists in certain schools come from completely the opposite place, the boundary. I'm respecting this boundary. We finish exactly on the hour. All of that boundary stuff is
Hmm.
really, really important in psychotherapy. We're not really very good at that in shiatsu. We don't focus too much on that. But I think getting the balance right,
Hmm.
and I think of it as on the one side you have the heart, and on the other side you have the mirror. My job is simply to be there as a, um, yeah, as just reflecting,
Hmm.
not bringing any of my own stuff in.
Hmm.
And that's what the clean language approach philosophy allows me to do in a practical sense, because we don't use any, we use the client's words. It's always about repeating the exact words back to the client. So you're actually hearing your own words coming back, which is neurologically speaking quite a thing, because one part of the brain, the left side of the brain, which is here, um, produces language, but it's another part of the brain that hears language and understands it. So when you hear your own words coming back, there's already some kind of neurological loop beginning to happen.
Hmm.
And with giving those words back, we just do it in the simplest kind of questions like, is there anything else about that? Or whereabouts might that be? Or what kind of, whatever that is, very simple questions. So the questions themselves act as a kind of filter to stop you as the practitioner
Hmm.
bringing your own presuppositions and judgments and unconscious bias into the space. And in my experience, that creates a very different energy in the space between us. So I'm not filling it with my compassion. I'm not filling it with my desire to help you.
Hmm.
There's a balance that's still there somewhere, but it's more around the edges.
And it's
I'm not
available if
just sitting
someone
there
wants
being
to.
completely dispassionate,
Yeah.
but I love that Buddhist word equanimity, that you're not swayed this way, you're not swayed that way. You have the equanimity to be completely present, completely aligned, completely grounded, and paying attention. That is the ultimate essence of what we do. We pay attention, and through those clean language questions or through our touch, we get the client to pay attention to what's going on within them. And yeah, and so coming to your question of if a person seems very closed, um, um, then all I do is well, I do this with everyone. I just say they've got a physical issue that's brought them along. Then I just say, how about we just go into a bit of a kind of meditative state, breathing, settling, feet on the floor, bum on the chair, and all of that. And let's see what your body knows, what your body would like to bring into the conversation about all of this. Because they've already been talking about it, in terms of narrative and what the doctors said and all the labels that they've been given by the NHS or whatever. Is it really okay to find out what your body knows about this? And then everything slows down. And then usually something starts to happen. What is your attention being drawn to? And it
Hmm.
can be something completely surprising, a completely different part of their body. Could be a memory that pops in their head. It doesn't have to be a somatic thing. And then we start working from there, just me just asking these simple questions. And it is really surprising to everyone, including the client, where that tends to take you. And it often or usually results in some kind of metaphor arising, not just the usual metaphors like it's like a pain in my neck or a dagger in my back or stone in my heart, those things, but much weirder and more personal and unique metaphors which embody some kind of real intelligence that the
Mhm.
nervous system has to offer. So we're coming back to that sense of what is the offer? How can we let that offer unfold into this space, which has its own chemistry because it's a very empty space,
Mhm.
amazingly empty. And you have to be careful with that. That's when maybe you do need to bring a bit of the compassion into it, because some people might not feel comfortable in such an empty space.
It feels as if the practitioner is holding that space. And even though I want to find out more about clear language as well in a moment, I'm wondering whether your Shiatsu practice was the foundation for that ability to hold that space, or is it coming from a different modality that you've experimented with?
No, no, it's absolutely lovely development from, I didn't want to talk a lot about how I got into shiatsu and all that because it takes up a lot of time and nobody's very interested.
No, I'm
But
just wondering more about
yeah,
the way you
yes, yes.
prepared yourself.
The there's a great line in Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. Um, I couldn't feel, so I learned to touch. And that when I heard that, I thought, yeah, yeah. I spent about the first 30 years of my life trying very hard not to feel anything, I think. And getting into shiatsu after I got burned out in my previous profession,
Hmm.
um, whoa, I thought, oh gosh, that's touch. That's me. What's happening here? And so on. And so I spent a few years really, really passionately trying to get good at shiatsu. And and trained at the Shiatsu College with all those wonderful teachers, and then we did some work with Kishi when he was still coming over to the UK, and and at that time, yes, I was also studying the NLP and then the clean language.
Hmm.
And when I saw the way Kishi worked with touch and the way my clean language teachers worked with words, I thought that's exactly the same thing. And that's why I called my book Words That Touch, because when you use language in that sort of way, really paying attention, really as sensitive as you can be to what
Hmm.
is actually happening in the
Hmm.
moment for that person and for you,
Hmm.
as Cindy Engel says, then um, you are touching. And the shiatsu, the shiatsu begins before they lie down. The
Hmm.
energy starts to move and to change, because they are paying attention to the deeper layers underneath normal consciousness, the deeper layers of what's going on for them. I do have a little case history that we can look at later
Of
on
course.
to give an example of that. Um, but just, yeah, I mean, a very quick example that just happened just recently was with a client who had a chronic pain, joint pain, which really was bad and hadn't responded to treatment from the normal sources, usual suspects. Um, she came along and I asked her to pay attention to the pain and as usual and get a sense of it and what it was doing and so on. No real response from it. And that's something that can sometimes happen. The body just says, sorry,
Not
I know
yet.
you think I'm making enough up, but I'm not, because I don't feel safe yet with you. Something like that. But as this is real Cindy Engel stuff, as she was doing that, I just felt something here in me, something that could not be denied. I couldn't just pretend it wasn't there. So I put my hand there and I just asked it, if you put your hand there, what happens? And she she did. And suddenly she was, full of a very strong emotion that she wasn't aware of at all before. And that was, as things went on and we did the Shiatsu and so on, that it was dealing with that very strong emotion that helped the shoulder, which was pretty good by the end of the session. So that's a very quick example, yeah, of
Information
how,
came from different sources. For someone who doesn't know anything about clean language, how would
yeah,
you describe it to them? What is it?
yes. Well, there's the actual practical side of it. What do you actually do? Those
Mhm.
questions that I just mentioned. And then there's the philosophy behind it, which is essentially, as I was saying, about allowing the cleanest possible, that's why it's called clean, cleanest possible space for the client. So that, yeah, exactly. So that you're not able, or it makes it much harder for me to bring in anything that's mine, that comes from my background, my diagnostic skills, my training, my unconscious desires to help this person, so on. It just is the perfect counterbalance for me. And actually, as part of my research for this session, I had a word with the wonderful, she's a Shiatsu practitioner and also a psychotherapist called Funbi Saras. She's studying Seiki at the moment with Alice Wielden. And so we just had a chat about what it's like for her to work with psychotherapy and with Shiatsu, because she calls herself a body psychotherapist, and Shiatsu is the body bit. I hope I'm getting it right. But kind of psychotherapy she does is called phenomenological existential psychotherapy. So phenomenological is the Zen bit, paying acute attention to what is happening in the moment, what is actually happening, not what we think is happening, and so on. So, and she said it's the phenomenological part that's common to both psychotherapy and to Seiki, the falling away of labels, she said, the falling away of the judgments and even the words, to come into contact with what is actually happening. And she also said once you start to see it in your practice, it's difficult to unsee it. And I asked her if I could quote that, and she said, yes, that's okay. So that's the falling away. And again, to come back to your question, the thing that made me think, oh, okay, these two, the Seiki and the clean language, are so similar,
Mhm.
was just my affinity with the whole kind of Zen approach of, yeah, of the falling away of things and just being present with what is actually there, not what the mind is trying to bring.
Mhm.
And I think that does allow the heart to be more present.
I see.
Mm.
So there's a combination between language, which is reflected back towards the client, if I'm understanding correctly,
Yeah,
and the part with body work and touch and mirroring what is happening in the body of the person rather than
yeah.
projecting onto them what we think would happen. Did I understand that
Yes.
correctly?
No, that's a very good point, because I think, as with all of Cindy Engel's work, the intimacy of shiatsu, it's just an incredibly intimate thing. My
Hmm.
hands are on you, and so on. We're breathing together, and so on. Um, that can create a lot of back and forth, which in the psychotherapy world they would call projection or transference. Your stuff can trigger my stuff can be felt through my hand. Your nervous system can really need to have some time to make sure that I'm not bringing my stuff into the contact.
Hmm.
And this gets very important when you start feeling feelings of attraction, for example, towards the person you're working, or vice versa. This
Hmm.
is serious stuff. This is where you really need some clarity of boundary.
Hmm.
Um, so that's another reason why I find that bringing some kind of clean attitude, you could say, and not even necessarily a lot of clean language, but
Hmm.
a clean attitude. How can I keep this space? It's so Zen. It's like those Zen monks with the brushes and the sand. How can I keep this space absolutely pure and essentially there for this person, that it's their space? And that's where I feel, that's really what it is. I'm really trying to find out, what is this person like when they are truly in their own space? And that's when it becomes amazing and wonderful.
Hmm.
And then to come back to the practical side, once they get to a certain point, I just say, would that be a good place to lie down? And we
Hmm.
begin the shiatsu,
Hmm.
which I don't usually ask very much, but take a leaf out of Bill Palmer's book. It is good to sometimes involve the person in the work,
Hmm.
and especially is that too much pressure and so on. You don't want to be killing them. And then after you come out afterwards for a kind of debrief, and I just always, how is it now and so on. Often people are in a bit of a wordless state after a shiatsu, and you don't want to make them get back into language. But just really, it's more like taking that wonderful time after the session when, we talk about oneness and duality and so on. When most people do have, they're kind of more along the spectrum towards oneness than they are towards the duality and the 10,000 things. And most people say, oh, my whole body feels like one thing now, you know. So when a person's in that lovely sort of liminal space, it's good just to reinforce the recognition that when you're kind and polite and respectful to your own nervous system, whatever the pains and the problems may have been, it
Hmm.
will probably be communicating with you in a helpful way. And then at the end, I just, ask them to come up with some kind of commitment to something different they might do
Hmm.
uh, between now and the next session.
I'm
And sometimes,
wondering whether
yeah.
you notice more profound transformations by using clean language in the shiatsu treatment. What made you so passionate about it?
Well, that's the thing. Everybody does shiatsu in their own sweet way, as Michael said, and I think the point here is, it came to me when I was talking to Funbi, really, listening to her. And for me, it's like, it's an identity thing. It, I, until I found the clean language, I didn't really feel doing, I was fully there.
Hmm.
It's me. It's like, this is what I do. This is me. And, when that's the most essential thing, whatever therapy you're doing. Is it really you that's doing it, or is it your teacher sort of doing it and you're imitating them? And that's when it comes from the heart, I think. And when you get that real body to body connection, and coming back to that idea of co-regulation, when I can be there and I'm really me and I love what I do, my nervous system is pretty well regulated, then the other person's nervous system is going to say, okay, I'm going to give it a go. I felt traumatized for 45 years, but this feels okay and I'll give it a go. That's the sort of,
I, I really appreciate that you've mentioned how important it is to one, have a regulated nervous system and keep an open heart. I've listened in a podcast recently, one therapist that I am quite interested in, she was mentioning that for her, she feels as if her gift to her clients is her calm nervous system. And that it
yes,
allows the clients to come into that space and to take anything that they need from there. But I really love to hear that you found your way, and this is, in a sense, your signature when it comes to the way that you provide the treatment.
yes, exactly. And that what she was saying comes back to what Michael Rose said. You can be pretty hopeless at shiatsu, but boom, boom, it's still going to work
It does the
because
job.
you're offering a co-regulated, a well-regulated system.
Yes.
And all of that unconscious, completely unconscious connectivity starts to happen. Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that many therapists or practitioners tend to use words like co-regulation, embodiment in
Yeah.
different settings. And I'm wondering what's your thought on that?
Well, I'm really curious about all that. And I made a list. Um, there's because when I teach my clean language course online, it's for bodywork therapists. That we get such an interesting gathering of people, And in the last one, there was somebody doing um, biodynamic breath work, which I looked up, and it looks really great. And there was someone doing what's called neuroaffective touch.
Hmm.
There's so many. There's somatic experiencing. There's all of Stephen Porges's polyvagal work. And um, what's it called? Um, it'll come back to me in a minute. And there's all the energy psychology things like EFT and EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
There's TRE. One of my colleagues is training in that trauma, trauma release work. That all of these things that are going on in the field, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
and even in the current issue of the Shiatsu Society magazine, there's a great article about putting things together. And in the context of this conversation, which is about Shiatsu, it just brought me back to something that, where is it, Philip van den Abele has said recently, um, if I can find it. Um, he's written an article recently on the origins of Shiatsu. Um, sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, uh, which I'm sure that article will be coming out soon. But he's a real scholar of the origins of Shiatsu, right? And these two Japanese gentlemen, Tamai Tenpeki and Kaisen Tanokura, he says they coined the name Shiatsu in the 1930s, and they were quite open and upfront about being very influenced by Western anatomy and
Mm-hmm.
bodywork. Um, and Tanakura explicitly states in his book, Philip says, that his practice combines Japanese bodywork with, quote, American osteopathy and chiropractic approaches.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like right there embedded in the origins of Shiatsu is an East-West thing. And I think you know, we can, if you want, focus purely on the East, get deeply into Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, Buddhism, and so on. And if that's your thing, then that's what you'll be doing, and that's what you'll be great at, and that's why people come to see. For me, I absolutely love bringing things together. The interdisciplinary approach is what works for me. So I think if you think about Masanaga's work too, he studied Western psychology. He tried to bring Western psychology into Chinese medicine. And as I understand the history of it, the acupuncture colleagues of his in Japan were really shocked by that. They thought they didn't want to know. Um, and so again, in the history of the Zen Shiatsu, as we do it, there is this East and West willingness to talk to each other. And so I think, I don't know if anyone else thinks this, but I think I'm soldiering on in that tradition. I'm bringing this beautiful thing called clean language into the way we can do shiatsu. And, and I think if we try to be, yeah, just to ignore the fact that all of these wonderful different approaches to working with the body, working with trauma, and
Mm-hmm.
so on, are in the field now, then we'll just stagnate as
So,
as a practice and as a, you know, shiatsu. Oh yeah. I mean, the other thing we have to be realistic about is that if you step back and you look at the way things happen and develop over time, shiatsu had a great time in the 70s, 80s, 90s. That's when in the West, in America and Europe, people were really interested in Zen and awakening and enlightenment and all of that stuff. That was the time that shiatsu was really growing. It isn't growing now. And we can't just go into denial and say, oh, well, it should be growing. It's, it isn't growing, except perhaps in Eastern Europe, which is really interesting, that people are much more interested now in shiatsu in Poland and so on. But for us in Western Europe, in Germany and Switzerland and the UK, the numbers are not looking great. And so I think it's just a natural time to say, okay, how can we bring some new energy in here?
mm-hmm.
How can we begin to look at what else could we be doing as well as the beautiful, pure shiatsu, which will always be beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
pure. And we do need to carry that torch and keep carrying it because one day it might start flaring up again, like yoga. Yoga was completely wacky hippie thing to do, and then suddenly, practically every middle-class white woman in America was doing yoga, and so these things come and go. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I feel about it.
I hear that there is a need for adapting different practices whilst also
Mm,
keeping the essence of shiatsu, the essence of the practice.
mm.
I'm wondering whether you've observed or what have you noticed in terms of what contributed to the decline in popularity in terms of shiatsu, the way you see it.
Oh, I don't really have a snappy answer to that one. I would say it's never been that popular. It's always been a tiny, tiny little minority practice, and it's hard to sell. Nobody knows what the word means.
Hmm.
It was very interesting. I think Keith Phillips quoted the results of the Shiatsu Society survey that about 43% of people had heard of it,
Hmm.
only 4% had tried it. So that sounds like a marketing opportunity.
For sure.
That's your department, Antonia.
For
Yeah.
sure. That's why I was curious whether you've noticed something in your experience, whether there's something that would be useful for us to be aware of and
Mm.
to contribute to the work that we're doing to bring more shiatsu into the world. But I do appreciate your approach with adapting and bringing new elements and maintaining
Yeah.
your individuality and finding an identity in the way that you share shiatsu.
Yeah.
Um, have you
And
noticed?
any sorry,
Go ahead.
anyone who really knows what they're doing. I mean, there's some fantastic examples out there, like Fanny Rock doing work with cancer in France. Um, Diego Sanchez, he did some amazing work in hospitals during the pandemic in Uruguay. Mikhail Mamishvili has got, had a whole practice around trauma work, and he's brought in. He's very clear. Shiatsu is great for trauma, but it's not enough.
Mhm.
So he has various elements in the work he does. These are the kind of examples I have in mind when I think about the future of shiatsu.
I appreciate you brought that up. I'm wondering whether when you were practicing or relying solely on shiatsu, clean language was the thing that was missing for you. And if so, what type of states do your receivers, the clients, get into when they come to a session with you?
What type of states? Whoa.
Yes.
Um, they, they, it is a slightly trance-like state. That's the whole point.
Hmm.
If you are really sitting there and listening to yourself, your breathing,
Hmm.
and your body, bringing awareness, bringing attention to your body,
Hmm.
then something starts to change in your prefrontal cortex and things start to slow down. Different parts of your brain, the right hemisphere starts becoming more active.
Hmm.
Language-oriented left hemisphere thinks, "What's going on here? I should be in charge," but nobody's really saying much. And so that you are invited into that different state. You could call it translate. It's probably not the best word to use. That puts people off. But, or you could say meditative state or mindful state. And, um, and then it's entirely up to the person, so, especially when trauma is involved, because there's can be a sign of safety net as you get into that and you get approach a little bit to part of the person that knows about the trauma. They can get an insight, they can get a flash of an image or a metaphor, and then they come right out and they start talking about everyday stuff again. And that's like putting the brakes on. That's a safety valve. It's fine. Let's do that for a minute. Um, but then I just invite them, would it be okay to come back to that thing you just felt there and see if there's anything else about that and so
Hmm.
on. And as I said, you begin to notice that energy is moving. And that's when I usually say, would that be a good place to lie down? And we can carry on keeping that energy moving. And sometimes it can spend up to an hour just working with the clean language, going through deep spirals of stuff. And it's exhausting and powerful. And then they lie down, it's like they can just blank out and process at a deeper level. I
It
mean,
seems to me as if the lying down part, the body work, is the integration part.
in that kind of case, it is, yeah. And that's what that I came across another quote for this, which is from the great conductor and musician Daniel Barenboim. And he's got this online series about listening to music, and he says you can listen to music at the end of the day to relax, to wind down, to, just come back to yourself. Or you can listen to music to actually develop as a person. And he said, and if you want to do that, you really have to listen from the first note to the last. You have to listen to the melody and the bass line. You have to listen to the way all the harmonies work. There's so much to listen to. It sounded very sort of Japanese and disciplined and so on. And and I thought, yeah. And the wonderful thing is that with clean language and shiatsu, you kind of get to do a bit of both. You can be very focused and you can really listen, and then you can just lie down, and all of that unconscious processing, as you say, can happen. And so it's good to have a mixture. And sometimes Dawn is watching this, and me and Dawn have been to concerts together. And you know how it is at the end of the day. You go to a concert and you really love the person, and you're really focusing, and then 20 minutes later, slightly
The
drifted
process
off.
is complete.
Yes. And then you come back with the start. Oh, wow. Yes, this is great. And pretending you weren't asleep. So that's yeah, that's where how I'd answer that
That's
question.
what made me curious about the states in which the receivers normally go to. And since you've had such a long and thriving journey with Shiatsu and with clean language, I'm wondering whether you have any special moments or challenging moments with some of your clients that you would like to
Well,
share
yeah,
with us.
thank you. I knew you were going to ask that. I've got a couple of stories I can tell you, um, which don't not confidentiality. And one of them was very early in my teaching career, and I was just teaching a normal class, a normal curriculum. I think we're doing the lung meridian, which is actually turned out to be quite relevant. And I just asked for a volunteer, and he lay down, and I sat there for a minute
Mhm,
preparing, and suddenly I just felt nausea in my stomach. And I wondered what I'd had for lunch and all of that stuff. But it got worse and worse, stronger. And I thought, well, I better just get on with it. And as soon as I made like a micro movement towards him, it just said, no, this is nausea. You're not going anywhere near that guy. So I thought, okay, this is obviously a step in my learning process here as a teacher. I'm just going to sit here. So I told the group that what I'm actually aware of right now is that I really mustn't go anywhere, near him. And I need to respect his space, which kind of comes back to what I was saying before. And as I sat there, I realized there was no boundary. There was no boundary at all. He didn't
mhm,
have one.
mhm,
And it seemed that my job was just to sit there and wait until some kind of sense of an energetic boundary began to appear. And I did that. And I can't remember. I don't think I did anything else, but I talked it through to the group. And he was obviously in quite a different state, speaking of states, by the end of it. And then he emailed me afterwards, and it turned out his job was a drug therapist, a drug counselor.
mhm,
And as usually applies in that job, you have to have been an addict yourself to be able to really do it properly.
mhm,
And and really, what was happening there was um, there was that old hollowed out, addicted part of him was kind of trying to pull me in to the
mhm,
space to give to help him, to rescue him.
mhm,
And that somehow or other my nervous system was saying that's the old pattern, that's the worst thing you could possibly do for this guy.
mhm,
And getting a sense that what's really needed here is a boundary. And we know from the metal element that that's just one part of what comes with good quality metal energy. Is you've got a boundary, you've got space, you can breathe, you can fill your lungs, you begin to feel confidence. I'm confident to be me. And anyway, he emailed me out and said that was, he told me the background to that and said it was the most powerful treatment he'd ever had so far in his journey as a shiatsu student. And so, of course, I learned something there. That I kept that was one of the things that set me on my little journey into what is the importance about this clarity of space and emptiness. Yeah.
Is
Uh,
that the lesson that you took away from it? The importance for the quiet
yes.
space and openness?
Yeah. And the other story that came to me was when I was assisting at the Shiatsu College. I was, one of the assistants after I graduated, and Nicola Lee was teaching, and she took us through this simple visualization. It was a wood energy day. She was doing wood, and she took us through a simple visualization of what's it like in your liver. And I was relaxed, went to my liver. Suddenly, I got this image of a volcano, and it it just stayed an image. I couldn't connect with it at all. And when we were asked to share with another person, I just sort of giggled. Oh, got a volcano, how funny. Um, and at that time in my life, I just had no desire at all to recognize the enormous sort of volcanic amount of anger that was stuck in my system. Although I can remember other people trying to point it out to me,
Mhm.
but I just didn't want to go there. And I'm sure if Nicola had come over and asked me a few clean questions, is there anything else about that volcano, I would have just clammed up, you know. But that was a good example in retrospect that my nervous system wanted me to know
Mhm.
that there was volcanic anger stuck in my wood energy.
Mhm.
The fact that I wasn't ready to go there was another part of it.
Did there come a moment when you were ready to go there? And if so, what happened?
The next 20 years. Yes.
So that volcano was patiently waiting for you to go and have a
Yeah.
look.
So to be comfortable with the client's anger is kind of important. If a client suddenly, accesses surprisingly massive amounts of anger, like
Mhm.
lava flowing down the side of the mountain,
Mhm.
then we come back to equanimity. Can I just be there and be present with them as that stuff begins to
Mhm.
manifest? Because if I can, then the field of co-regulation will do what it's supposed to be doing. It's okay to have this anger, you know.
How
Yeah.
can you protect yourself as a therapist in those moments? And I'm not talking about the physical space necessarily, but when you do have two nervous systems, one of them is intensely dysregulated and the other one needs to maintain its calm. Sounds to me like a impressive challenge to be able to handle that space.
Well, Cindy is the expert on that. Um, just speak from my own experience. You just do it again and again and again. Do your meditation, do your qigong, do whatever helps you, helps your nervous system to know that it can slip right back into boom, self-regulation.
Hmm.
Have your imagery, have your metaphors, have your guides present. Make sure they come back. They might have run away too. Help!
That's why
Get
I was
back here.
asking if there are
And
two volcanoes
again,
there.
Mikhail Mamashvili is very good on all of that. Yeah. Um, because we're here to make, well, that's another good point. What are we here for?
Hmm.
And in the clean philosophy, this is not purely with clean, it's pretty common to a lot of approaches these days. I'm not here to make you change. I'm here to reflect things back, to hold a safe space for you to begin to look at that volcano, get a sense that it's okay to be present with it.
Hmm.
And with when we're asking clean questions in an extended way, what you're doing is you're helping the person to lay out the map of their internal subjective landscape.
Hmm.
And then you begin to see that these different bits of the map actually connect up, and that there are some dark places, yes, and some scary places, yes, but there are also some bright places and some possibilities. And you just like, we do in Zen Shiatsu, we look for the healthy energy. We don't focus all the time on the pathology. And
Hmm.
you just keep trying to bring that healthy energy into the space and into awareness and see, is there enough energy going into the healthy bit to balance or to begin to influence the habitual pattern of the darker stuff? And that can take time, of course. Um, but that's the aim.
I appreciate that you've also mentioned the darker side because oftentimes in the holistic sphere, we're just looking at the good, the positive, the light, which consequently creates spiritual bypassing. But the fact that you're mentioning there are so many layers, and it's so important to learn how to contain all of them and work with what's available to balance things out, rather than just suppressing what's challenging or provocative in a way.
Yeah. Um, I hadn't really thought about just looking for the light. That sounds a bit going into denial of the basics of yin and yang. And that, of course, is another wonderful point that when a person has done enough work like that, the thing that seemed scary, you know, and is in almost always there because of the need to protect you from some traumatic thing from a long time ago, the thing that seems scary becomes a resource in itself because less energy is going into it, but it's still there as a safety net
Hmm.
in case something else happens. You know, you don't want to get rid of it. It won't go away anyway. You
Yeah.
can't just get rid of it. Mm.
That again opens the box to so many questions, but I do remember at the beginning of the conversations you've mentioned a case study, and I'm curious
Oh
whether
yes, yeah,
you wanna explore that.
yeah. If that's okay, it'll take a few minutes. I'll just sort of talk us through it, and as I do have permission of the client here. And she was seeing me over a period of time for panic attacks, and then she got pregnant and she had a miscarriage. Um, and she was very matter of fact about it. She was one of those quite strong people who doesn't really go into their body much, and that's what we've been working on with the panic attacks. Anyway, um, so she had some back pain after the miscarriage. Saw the osteopath, that helped a bit, and then she said, "Now all I've got is a stuck feeling in my neck,
Hmm.
turning it to the right, and all it needs is a click." As if she was telling me, just let me lie down. I know you ask those funny questions, but don't bother. Let's just let me lie down, click my neck, and everything will be fine. So that's already a challenge, isn't it? You because you don't want to be manipulated by your client. You want to say, wait a minute, would it be okay if we just explore that neck a little bit? Anything else about that stuck feeling? And so she's accepted the challenge and stayed with herself for a minute and breathed. And then something came up for it. She said, it's just about convincing the inside of me that it's okay to get pregnant again. And there's quite a lot packed into that little sentence. If you think, convincing the inside of me that it's okay to get pregnant again.
Hmm.
So I repeat those words and, is there anything else about that? And again, she's silent for a moment. She says, I can't imagine not having another child. And so my little clean language brain is thinking, okay, that's a resourceful place to be. If you can't imagine not having another child, that's some good energy there. So I kind of put a flag in there. And then I ask her, is there anything else about that? Not can't imagine not having. And then she does what often happens. She goes right back into the darkest stuff. She says, the actual experience of the miscarriage is so visceral, it's traumatic. And then she sort of got practical again, started talking about preparing to get pregnant again. And as she's doing that, she turns to the right again and she gestures very vividly and says, I've just got to get through all of this stuff. And both hands right in front of her face. It's obviously her nervous system is signaling something pretty important to me. And I just mirror that gently and say, is there anything else about all this stuff right there in front of her face? And she turns to the right again and goes, ah, makes a kind of erg noise and feels really sharply the crick in her neck. So again, I just say, is it okay just to stay with that crick in your neck? See if there's anything else about that. So she thinks again, she goes inside, and then she says, actually, it's about protection. It's like my womb is saying, don't get pregnant again yet.
Hmm.
So that's really interesting. That it's like inside, our insides know something
Hmm.
about what she needs to do. And is there anything else about don't get pregnant again yet? And then again, she goes right back into the darkness and puts her hands right down there on her abdomen and says, it's empty. then she's right back into the trauma of it. It just fell out of me, she said. And this real wave of emotion comes out of just, utter shock and helplessness, filling that space. Um, so I have to come back to my equanimity
Mhm.
after feeling the emotions. And is there anything else about all of that? And again, she starts moving to the positive. The one word she says is safe, safe. And anything else about safe? And she says it needs that protection to keep it as it is and safe. And I say, and how would that be? And then again, she goes right back into negative. Remember, the panic attacks was her thing. She says, suddenly I can't breathe. Mm. And and then she takes a little time to get her breath and says, I can't marry up being pregnant and the fear of losing it again, going through all that time of pregnancy with all of that fear. So, you know, again, we're kind of at a very important but kind of stuck place. And then again, it's really important for me to be able to be just present with all of that and curious about it, but not trying to make anything happen. And so, what happens when all of that you can't imagine not having it? Oh, yes, that's when I remember the resource, and I say, okay, you have that, all the going through the pregnancy, all the fear, and what about not when you can't imagine not being pregnant again, not having another child? And again, she's in this slightly trance-like state, and she says, it's there. And she gestures out in front of her. It just needs a bridge. I don't know what it is at this point, but she's obviously talking about the baby. It's there. It just needs a bridge. And she gestures like this from her heart to out there in front of her. And then I ask practical question for that bridge to be there, what needs to happen? And this is I'm not talking to her to her uh, conscious mind. I'm asking her nervous system for that bridge between you and the baby to be there. What needs to happen? And then she just clicks back into her good old self and says, sheer bloody mindedness to deal with the fear, to be present and able to handle the fear, and to get really fat in pregnancy. So that's the other thing she somehow her body knew she needed to get really fat. And I said, and how would that be? And then she says, actually, it's already a bit closer, the baby out there, and the void, the sense of emptiness is smaller. So it's like she's already sensing the baby's getting closer. And then she puts her hand up to her neck again, uh, and turns her head to the stuck point, which is still stuck. And I say, what's it like there now? And she says, there's the bit I can't see behind me. And what's that like? The bit that you can't see behind you? And she says it's stuck. It's like no man's land. It's like this, all the work to get pregnant and be pregnant and all the fear. There's still that stuckness in the
Mhm.
system. And then she goes back into practical talk about the pregnancy and how she thought she was really doing her best to go with the flow and to accept that she can't control everything, which was kind of an issue for her, being too controlling. And as she does that, finally, I noticed that the energy around her uterus area is really starting to move in a good way. So that's when I say, would it be okay to lie down and we can start the shiatsu treatment? And then in the shiatsu treatment, yeah, I was working and found a sort of trigger point here on her neck, which when I went into it, released, it caused a real sort of spasm in her left hip, which, it triggered a spasm there, which was she knew that was a place of really old trauma stuck in her left hip. But she was very surprised that there was this hip shoulder thing going on. But it released a lot. And then by the end of the shiatsu, yes, she could turn her head, that had changed. And so just finishing off that, I just said to him, okay, what do you know now about all of that? The whole thing.
Mhm.
She thought for a moment and just said patience. It was like she was agreeing to the message that her nervous system, her body, her womb was telling her just patience. And she took her own advice, and of course, did get pregnant again, and does have another kid now. Um, and all that might have happened anyway, but maybe it happened a bit quicker because
Mm-hmm.
of,
Mm-hmm.
because of that kind of work. So
And
that's yeah, took a bit of time going through that, but it's a good example of the ups and downs, and how to stay present with it all, and trust that a person does know how to find their way out of this mess with a bit of guidance.
I also hear about the sense of grace that the person had in the moment with their own body,
Yeah.
which is not something that we have access to all the time. I mean, especially in the lifestyle that we have in our modern society, taking a moment like that to really allow the body to speak to you.
Well,
It's
grace is a lovely word, yes. Um, we don't use that one enough, I think, in the Shiatsu world.
That's how it made me feel when you were describing that.
Yeah. But if I could just do a little check with that, when you say grace,
Hmm.
um, what kind of grace would that grace be?
To me, grace is openness, spaciousness, patience, harmony, balance. Doesn't necessarily have to do with the literal connotation of the word. So
Hmm.
it's more
So
about the expansiveness of the thing.
expansiveness and
Yeah,
openness.
yeah.
And if I can ask one more, whereabouts is grace for you?
Um, Upper body, front of my forehead,
Yeah.
kind of like leading the way and allowing it to be followed. That's how it comes across to me.
Leading the way, did you say?
Yeah,
And allowing it to be followed.
yeah,
So grace is leading the way.
yeah. It's like an invitation. Come this way, come this way.
This way, come this way. Exactly. Thank you. I mean, that's just a mini demonstration of the discipline of clean language. I have to remind myself, I have no idea what you mean by
Hmm.
grace.
Hmm.
But now I have a better idea that it's up here and it's allowing yourself to be led by grace, and so on. That, yeah,
That's
thank
so
you.
interesting. You take away all the labels, all the
Yes,
connotations, and
yeah,
you just allow the person to express themselves in the most authentic way.
yes.
That's how it felt to me.
And if we'd gone on with those questions, you would find yourself in a state of grace 100% in a fairly short time.
Wow.
And you would also probably find bits that get in the way of being in a state of grace.
I've already noticed some. Like the
Yeah,
moment
okay.
when you mirrored back at me like it's inviting, it's asking to follow, I was like, nah, we're not getting there.
Exactly.
Just a feedback for anyone listening to understand
Yeah.
how clean language
And
works.
then you just get curious about those bits that are saying we're not getting there, and what do they want? And again, this all ties in very well with another hugely popular thing at the moment, which is internal family systems.
I
Where you
practice a lot.
Oh, you do? Okay, so there you go. So that you recognize there are different parts of us, and that wonderful spiritual side of internal family systems, which is when you peel away all of the parts, what's
Grace
there?
is there.
Grace is there. Yes.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a huge fan of internal family systems.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
it's a wonderful practice. But I do notice that there's a lot of doing and non-doing, which is something that we've mentioned before we started the recording. And it's more in relation to how much the practitioner needs to do and how much it needs to allow. I'm wondering whether you have a couple of thoughts about that.
Yes, the doing and the non-doing is absolutely central to what I'm talking about here, I guess. Um, because in the shiatsu part of a session, I'm doing a lot of the work, and that's very different from the way I am when I'm asking the clean question. Um, it can be really helpful, incidentally, um, when you're working and you find a subo or whatever, instead of just going on automatic pilot, just to stay there and get curious about it and ask yourself a clean, what's it like here? And is there anything else about that? Oh, there's a vibration here. And does it have a color or a sound? Yes, it's sort of, and all of these little bits of information that can start coming more into awareness make a real difference to the quality of connection to the point, and they can really make a difference to how the person experiences what's going on there. So that's one thing. So that is quite a lot of doing.
Mhm.
But the non-doing is, yeah, the Zen part. That's very much the shift of the balance when we're doing the clean language. Yes, it's takes a lot of concentration and a lot of presence and so on from me, but the doing is for them to do.
So
Um,
allowing the space for them to do it for themselves.
yeah, yeah.
I hear that. I'm conscious of our time, but I
Oh,
do
right, we've
have
done an hour. Yes, what fun.
we do have
So,
I still have one more question if you have
yeah,
the space for it. And you've already given me a hint on this, but I'm wondering, what are your hopes for Shiatsu in the future?
yeah. Well, I kind of my answer that was what I already said. My my hope for it is we get a fantastic bunch of new younger people who really love the stuff and are interested in what else is going on in the world and are keen to develop it and integrate new stuff. But also, and I think this is a bit of an issue these days. And Cliff Andrews had a wonderful webinar about what's happening as AI and digital awareness and short attention spans start coming into the field, that people do have the discipline to um, take all the basic Zen principles seriously, and and that's just the usual path of training that we all have to go on. But if people start peeling off from the training, saying, "No, I can do this easier on AI," then that's not going to be the kind of future for Shiatsu that I would like to see. Yeah.
I'm an optimistic at heart, and even though I do see some of the benefits of the new age technology, I don't think that there's ever going to be a moment where being human won't matter anymore. So the slowness, the presence, the compassion,
Mm.
and I will come back to the grace of being a human. I don't think
Yes.
that that can be replaced in any ways. So probably there's going
Yes.
to be a need for that even more
Yeah.
than before. Who knows?
Well, sure. We're not going to go out of business as Shiatsu people with AI, but we still need to do the marketing.
For sure.
So over to you, Antonia. Yes,
Thank you, Nick, for your time, energy, resources, wisdom, and new insight, and also for holding the space for me to explore grace in my body and to see how it shows up in my field at this moment. That was a pleasant surprise, and I'm very happy that we managed to do this together.
great. Thank you very much for going for that, and thank you for Dawn for sitting in. And yes, and if anybody is interested in my online course, just have a look at my website, nickpole.com, for the dates of the next one. Thanks a
Perfect.
lot.
Thank you as well.
Cheers.